Hey everybody, Zach Joyner here for Spideydude Experience. This episode is titled Absolutely 2099 Carnage. Yeah, we're going to be covering a lot in this episode. In fact, we're going to be covering 2 trades this episode. First up, part of this particular episode, because of 2099 especially, it's Neil!
Yeah, that's right. I'm here to suffer so you don't have to, Zach.
But
I'm doing good, though. How are you today?
That's a loaded question. I'm doing
oh no! I shouldn't have asked that. No,
it's fine. It's fine. Look, by the time this is released, I'll be having a fantastic day. So, yeah, we got the absolute Adam.
Hello.
That's it. That's it.
Just hello. All right, we got P. Thuggin. Back.
Neil, you should have heard me when you asked him how he was doing. I was just like, no!
Damn, you almost blew out your mic there.
I know.
No idea what's going on, and that's okay. I'm not going to get into it on air. So,
I'm the only one wearing over-ear headphones. I just realized that. Everyone else says that.
Neil, I was looking for mine. I don't know where they are, to be honest. So,
the truth be told, these are about to become a relic if you watch the iPhone 12 event. They're no longer going to be included in the box anymore.
Dang.
Dun, 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 dun.
all right. So, Spider-Man 2099 and maximum Carnage.
So we're covering a bunch of issues tonight. We're going to be covering ASM 29, ASM 30, ASM 31, ASM 32, ASM 33, and 34.
Are we not doing 35 and 36?
And 35 and 36, yeah. 35 and 36. So we're covering ASM 29 through 36. Why are we covering so many issues tonight? Well, it's because, frankly, the 2099 trade is normal sized, but the Absolute Carnage trade is not. It's basically a 4-issue trade. It's very much the smallest volume of the so that's been released thus far. And so we thought we'd just go ahead and
it's a 4-issue trade that's beefed up by the fact that one of the issues is big. It's the Red Goblin issue from like back in October of last year. So we figured we might as well just knock it out all in one go and then take it 2099 along with it.
Exactly. And that way we can basically finish out all of 2019, start focusing on the stuff that's in 2020, and get very, very close to catching up within an episode or 2. So that's the great news. So eventually we'll be doing it Bill O'Reilly style. We'll be doing it live. We'll do it live. But like I say, I'm super excited. I'm really, really excited about this episode, and we will go from there. So first up, we're going to be covering an issue that I think is probably one of the most interesting issues. Just because I think it's one of those that when I went back and reread it, I was like, oh, that's right. This is the issue where we get the biggest hint of something happening. And I'm going to say this. It probably was one of my favorite issues of Nick Spencer's run, just because of the fact that it literally had a bombshell implication. And so, sorry, my computer is somewhat being crazy right now, but
here, you want me to take the wheel for a minute for you?
Go ahead. While I'm pulling up pulling the issue up so you guys can visually see the issues. Or you guys go ahead and talk about it, Neil.
So, do you want to go through the plot, or just talk about what it entails?
I'll give a synopsis of the plot here in a second. So, kind of talk about the big things that it entails, right quick.
But do you care about spoilers, or everyone's read it, but do you care about talking about the bombshell itself, or
let's talk about the big bombshell itself.
Yes,
talk about everything that led up to it here in a second.
So at the end of the issue, there's a big bombshell drop that Peter was planning to propose to MJ before she left for LA for her big movie deal. And as someone who, as people who have been sat through One More Day in the Brand New Day era, this was big because I don't think anything like this had ever happened for Spider-Man in those 10-ish, was it 11 at this point? 11-ish years.
Yeah. Definitely not
since America was dissolved. This was arguably one of the biggest implications for Spider-Man's relationship with MJ ever.
Yep.
What issue was it he proposed to her in the pre-One More Day timeline? Was it?
Well, it was twice.
Yeah.
So 189.
Yeah, I think it's
289.
It's like two. Well, it's 290.
It was ASM 289, and then I think it was
187.
289 is the Hobgoblin reveal.
Oh,
so
yeah.
The issue after that.
and then the other time I think was in Spec. I could be wrong on that.
No, it was not in Spec. So both proposals were done in Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
In the Ross and Drew run, it was done, and she
Wolfman wrote it.
The Wolfman wrote it, and I think Andrew drew it. And so basically, they kind of went through, and she kind of freaked out, and then she kind of left the books for a while during the Wolfman run.
That's when he brought in Black Cat to
to kind of stoke those flames of passion and desire, right? But
drama.
By the way, Wolfman's run is so underrated in my opinion. I loved his run.
I've actually heard the opposite from some people.
Really? Well, it's because Len Wein before I thought was terrible, and then when Wolfman took over, I loved his issue 200 with the burglar. That's a great issue.
I heard someone say that after the bombshells that happened this month, that as of this recording, that if it doesn't pan out well, it could be just as bad as the Len Wein run.
Ooh, no way.
It's like that's a bit of an exaggeration.
Listen, by the time that this comes out, the Kindred identity has been revealed. When we're recording this, obviously we'll have more to talk about that in a future episode. But yeah, here's the cover for ASM 29.
That's a beautiful cover. I love the lighting.
I love the lighting on it. I wish this actually would have been a poster of Otley's.
They done a 24 by 36 of it. That would have been great.
So MJ, has basically accepted a role in a big time movie. This is basically her exiting stage left to star in her brand new Amazing Mary Jane series. And so Peter's kind of he's saddened by her departure, but he's the one that really is I'm going to convince you to go. But he makes a fatal error by saying, I'll be right back. It's never going to end well.
And then MJ even says, you jinxed it, you idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Not those words exactly, but that's the...
So basically, he's out swinging around running an appointment, basically because his sister Teresa needs Spider-Man to help her search for her ex-boyfriend David, who is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. David's been kidnapped by the Chameleon, who extracts precious information from the man's mind by nearly killing him. Peter then loses the opportunity to ask.
I think he did die.
Yeah, he actually did. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's some of these synopsises are typoed. Using
he dies.
He dies. Peter then talks to Aunt May, and they have a heart-to-heart, and basically Aunt May's like, you know what you need to do. Get off the pot. So out comes the ring, and there's Peter Parker holding the ring, sitting on the bed all mopey because he didn't ask Mary Jane to marry him. And
Spencer basically just blatantly references One More Day by saying maybe some other day.
Maybe some other day. There's been several references to One More Day throughout this run. I mean,
that was the most blatant though.
I don't know the panel on issue 1 where it's the zoom in on basically essentially Mary Jane's missing ring finger was pretty. I'm talking about in dialogue though. That's the closest you've had to a direct reference.
Narration,
exactly.
Technically, but
exactly. Yeah.
Real quick, I want to talk about the art real quick.
It's great.
Yeah. So this issue was drawn by Francesco Manna, who I wrote a review for this issue back when it first came out, and I kind of compared him to Diet Stuart Immonen. In the same way that Vic Bogdanovic is like Diet Greg Capullo. And that's not meant to be a slight, because if the worst thing I can say about you is that you're discount Stuart Immonen, then you're on a good track. This guy's currently doing the Rise of Ultraman miniseries that Marvel is doing in collaboration with the people who own Ultraman, and he's drastically come into his own style since he's turned more towards like a Pepe Larraz style of art than Stuart Immonen. But with the revelation that Otley has left the title, big sad by the way. I'll miss him.
We'll definitely be talking about that when we get to 850.
Yeah, but if they got Mana to come back on the title, I would totally be happy with this because this was an exemplary issue for art.
Yeah. I thought that the way the lighting and everything was done on the artwork was really exceptionally well done. There's been some really great fill-in artists. I know that there is a desire to go back to maybe doing ASM once a month or maybe 18 issues a year instead of 24, but I really like the fact that they've got a pretty good bench to be able to pull out. Will you go talk to the dog?
That's staying in.
Really quickly, Neil, there's some kind of squeak. Someone's squeaking on the mic.
That's my desk chair, I think.
Okay. I just didn't know if it was a microphone or what. As far as this issue goes, I think this issue is definitely. Oh, sorry. I think this issue is definitely was a solid good introduction to, I think, having a reintroduction to like the marriage and teasing that. Obviously they teased that in the first issue of the whole of Nick Spencer's run, but this is really like hitting the head, nail with the head, whatever you want to call it, whatever that phrase is.
Yeah, it's out there now.
It's out there, and I think this issue is. I like the art. The art's solid. It's not like, I don't think groundbreaking. I kind of want I don't know. I mean, granted, a lot of people don't like Herberto Ramos anymore, or don't like him. I'm not really love him either necessarily, but I don't know. I'm just used to him now, and this guy seems okay. I don't know. It's okay. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. It's not. I don't think it's great. It's solid, which is it's not a bad thing.
Like I said, he's looking on Francesco Mana's record, he mainly seems to be like a fill-in artist for most people because like the last thing he did before Rise of Ultraman was an issue of Captain Marvel, and it was a filler issue before Empire. But he mainly seems to be like the guy that you pull on when the chips are down and you need a guy to come in and clutch last minute.
I would like to see some of these are fill-in artists that we'll get, like especially I think in the next episode that maybe get more of a chance to shine. I know Pat Gleason, obviously we'll be talking about him here in a minute, but obviously when we're recording this, it was just announced that Ryan Otley has left the title with 850, and that was his last issue, which was really preview. It's good. I think there's a fairly good bench. I think they've done a pretty good job of bringing in guys that don't completely take you out. Obviously, the big exception to me is Chris Bachalo, but I also think that by giving him his own title with Nonstop Spider-Man, that they're kind of giving him his own title because like thematically, like he is very much sticks out like a sore thumb when he fills in for issues. At least with Ramos and Manila here, there is some consistency there. It doesn't just completely art wise take you out of the story, if that makes sense.
No, I agree with that. No, I think this issue is a great issue, and I think what? Oh, sorry. I said yeah. I missed the art apologist name, by the way. So
it'll be back someday.
Excellent. No, I think this is a good issue, and I think that I want to really talk about like the marriage, like really bad, but I don't think it's time yet. It's weird, but I will say
it's definitely something that's on the back burner right now, especially and partially I think that was done because of the scheduling, the fact that the response to Amazing Mary Jane was so high that it warranted more issues than the issues never came out because something happened in 2020 that we weren't expecting when these issues were coming out.
Yeah, and that can't be placed on Marvel to carry the onus.
Right.
Yeah, right. You can't. Yeah, you can't do that. No, I think that. No, I mean, back in the day, I mean, Zach can vouch for this. Obviously, is that you had Joe Quesada be like, well, we aged the character. We've done all this, and and I'm not a Quesada hater like probably most of that crew was or is or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure how everyone feels about Joe Quesada here. I'm not like I'm like pro Quesada. I'm not anti Quesada. I think he's done some good. He's done some bad. He's done some a lot of stuff in between. But that being said, I think I even then I knew, and then this is why I think I accepted Brandy Day back, a little bit more than most people did, is I understood where they were at the time, because they wanted to have Spider-Man more relatable for a more general audience. And I think him being married, even though most people are married, it's just you want to keep him young. And I didn't necessarily always agree with it, but I understood why. Now with the creation of Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen, and now and a lot of it's hilarious because it seems like all those people who are upset about the marriage ending can thank probably Into the Spider-Verse and Miles Morales, characters they probably didn't like, for basically allowing Marvel to be like, hey, you know what? We can actually marry Peter Parker because we've already have a young Spider-Man. We have Miles Morales. And so
real quick, Paul, you're blowing out your mic.
My bad. And so the thing is with this is the first insinuating obviously with heavily now where they're going, and I'm really excited, and I think it's great, and I think it especially with what Kindred and I keep thinking about issue 850 what happens. So it's like what this issue does is pretty much it kind of to me sets up, I think, honestly, Kindred and a big plot thing for this whole series. So yeah, it's really exciting. This will look back as a very important issue for Spider-Man, in my opinion.
Sorry, can you hear me? I muted my mic.
Yeah.
So
no, I'll say this. This is we're definitely getting into the real nitty gritty of year 2 of Spencer's run by this point, and unfortunately, we have to take a detour. Yeah. Let's go around. Let's do grades right quick, because since we have so many issues we're covering tonight, what is everybody's grade on this issue?
A+.
Yeah, I'll give it an A. I like the art. I don't really care about Teresa Parker, but I'd say this issue.
She kind of came out of left field for this one.
Yeah.
So, side note on something I didn't get to talk about earlier. I do like the use of Carly Cooper in this issue as like a gal pal / foil for MJ. And also a nice continuity note that MJ has like a little sheet over her window that Peter broke into in ASM 23. Very good continuity note on the artist's part.
Which I appreciate that. Yeah, that's very well done. I'm ready to move on to the next issue. Let's do that right quick.
What's this? Can we do and really quickly? Why don't we just put it in chunks? Why don't we review it in chunks?
Yeah, I was gonna do the recap and everything like that.
We'll just review it in chunks.
So real quick, here's what you need to know about Absolute Carnage. Null's the god of the symbiotes, and he wasn't coming, but after Absolute Carnage, he is now. He's still coming. That's it.
Still, a year later.
A year later, he's still coming.
A year later, yeah, he's still on his way.
But you can pick up the Absolute Carnage figure if you go to your local local like Walmart or Kmart or Target, and pick up the new Carnage figure that's based off of this new Absolute Carnage design.
Well, this is Norman Carnage, not
this isn't. Yeah,
this is Carnage.
Yeah, no, this is Normie Carnage, Absolute Carnage tie-in, but also probably one of the most important issues in determining who is actually Kindred.
Oh yeah,
that you'll see, and so here we are. I'm gonna pick it up. It is both of issues are drawn by Ryan Otley. Inker is Cliff Rathburn. Nick Spencer is the writer. Both issues 30 and 31.
Covers are by Fairburn by this point, if I'm correct.
Yeah. So, synopsis. 2 weeks ago, Kindred has visited Ravencroft, killing Dr. Windhorst, who has been brainwashed to believes he's Mysterio, before making small talk with Norman Osborn. Meanwhile, small talk with Norman Osborn. Meanwhile, in the present, Spider-Man is helping Normie Osborn and Dylan Brock escape Strickland's warehouse in Manhattan. They are pursued by an iteration of Carnage that is in fact Norman Osborn, yet thinks he's Cletus Cassidy. Thank you, Dan Slott. Anyway, Spider-Man is distracted by his battle with the Red Goblin, as well as Harry Osborn's welcome home party before getting out of rehab, allowing Carnage to gain the upper hand. So basically, there's a series of flashbacks throughout this issue that go back to when Harry was first coming home from the drug issues. I think this is issue 112, if I'm remembering correctly.
105. That's
105. Okay, so 105 was the issues that were definitely referenced here. And so clearly that is something that is of importance in regards to Kindred's identity. There's also the conversation between him and Norman is definitely there. That jumps us to the next issue 31, which two-part issue, or two parts in this issue. Great cover by Ryan Otley. What a just great cover.
There's so much detail. There's no negative space. I appreciate that a lot.
Every bit of this space on this cover is used. So Absolute Carnage tie-in, issue 31. All right. So again, using the synopsis, Peter is saddened by him. Oh wait, that's not the right one. So basically, this continues right where we left off, and most of this issue is Kindred talking with Norman. Mm-hmm. And talking about how he is, how even still he is, like, he screams her name in the middle of the night. I hate him, but I don't hate him the way that he hates you, and it's just very, very foreshadowing of Kindred's character, definitely in this issue. Again, written by Nick Spencer, drawn by Ryan Otley.
We getting feedback?
Yes. We were getting feedback.
I'm trying. Hold on.
Okay, so do we want to just get into the thoughts, since we kind of got the...
Yes.
Or did we...
Paul, let's go with you first.
Oh, all right. Yeah, so with these two issues, I really liked I really liked these issues because they focused on Kindred, and at this point, we hadn't really focused anything on Kindred. And so, with all of that, I was totally fine with it. I read a little bit of the Absolute Carnage tie-ins. I'm not sure if you guys all did, but I did, and I dropped out after like 2-3 issues. I knew that he was protecting Eddie's son and Normie, but yeah, it was one of those things where I really like the fact that Nick Spencer was able to still intertwine his Kindred plots and everything, and not have to worry about, at least from trying to tie into this big stupid crossover. Which again, I wanted to be into because I heard all these great things about the Carnage, Venom series. And it was like, it's okay. It's like a symbiote story.
I will tell you, I was really let down. I was hoping we were going to get some movement on the Null stuff, and it just felt like it was spinning its wheels at this point.
Yeah, it could have been easily compressed into like 4 issues.
Yeah, it definitely didn't need to be a 5-issue arc with all these tie-ins. That to me was not necessary.
And going off of what Donnie Cates said, apparently editorial wanted to make like what was supposed to be a Venom arc with Stegman on art into a whole event, which was dumb.
Again, this is the sales mentality. It's probably the sales department. But what this really reminds me of, speaking of sales departments, this reminds me of the Clone Saga in one specific way. If you guys go back and read the Return of Cain arc in the Clone Saga, you'll notice that the sensational issue had very little to do with Cain. In fact, he's only in the issue, like, of the 22 pages, he's in like 4. Most of the issue is dealing with whatever plot at the time, which was mainly the Jessica Carradine plot that Dan Jurgens wanted to write. So Jurgens basically like delegated it down to the rest of the guys to handle that Return of Cain arc, and kind of gave a few pages to kind of tie it in, and that was it. That to me. This makes so much sense. ASM did not need to ground to a halt. I thought this is the way you do an event where you have a tie-in, where you don't have to read the rest of the event to understand what's going on.
Right.
They basically gave you the exposition recap page that you used to get all the time in comics. It's very DeFalkian. That's a word that I am coining here on the Spideydude Experience, in the sense of the mandate of every issue being somebody's first. So there's enough there that it catches you up to what the situation is, and then so you know why Spidey's got these two young kids. Okay, that makes sense. All right, Carnage, crazy stuff with Carnage is going on. Okay, cool. He pivots you to the really, really important Kindred stuff, which I get that some people are like, why do they have to do it in the middle of the event? Blah blah blah. No, it keeps things moving.
It makes sense too with Norman being Carnage. It kind of sets it up perfectly.
Exactly. And even without the event, you can just assume that Carnage got out and he's on the prowl for Normie and this random kid who's
see Venom for more details.
It's in media res.
Yeah, and just go up. Oh, we lost Paul, I guess.
I just had to do something real fast.
Okay, sorry. But I did appreciate how this is arguably one of the best tie-ins to what I've seen the last couple of years.
Agreed.
Usually event books usually tie-ins grind ongoings to a halt. Like if you've read Miss Marvel, Civil War 2 completely ground that book to a goddamn halt, and it never regained its momentum. And I'm glad that it didn't happen to this book, because I've been enjoying Spencer's run, and I'm glad that it didn't kill the book while it was going.
Yeah, I mean, I just really appreciate the fact that they literally didn't, because so many times, and it felt like when you had event comics, and especially during the slot run, they didn't really touch on it on major events at the times, and it was touched upon on a satellite book like A Friendly Neighborhood or a Spectacular. So, and even then you're like, oh, this is just the tie-in. This is just the tie-in, and it didn't really fit the overall narrative of what's going on in Amazing Spider-Man. And so I really, really appreciated the fact that Spencer found a way to interweave his story within that context of that art, and it not seem like it wasn't unimportant. Basically, if you skipped these two issues, you were missing out, because this was some of the most important clues you would have gotten in regards to who Kindred is.
And in retrospect, now that we know who Kindred is, I'm not going to get too far into it, but this was the issue where everyone overthought everything. Yeah. And then when the big reveal came, and we don't know if it's a fake out or not, people were like, "Oh, we overthought this. Now I'm mad because I put this much effort into it." When Spencer explicitly said, "Temper your expectations, guys." I'm building towards something, and the thing is unlike Peter David, who got yanked off a title too soon. That's not happening with Nick Spencer. They're basically giving him carte blanche to build this epic out. And so that I really just appreciate that. So let's kind of go through. Do we want to kind of give? I'll say this. I did think. I don't know how we want to approach this, because I mean, is anyone getting some weird static?
I'm not. Oh, is it me? Here.
It might be. It's a weird
I'm muted, so it's not me.
Hang on. There we go. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Anyway, so the all things being considered, I think at the time I said on Spider-Man Crawl Space when I was part of the show, that show, I said it's Harry. I mean it's clearly Harry. And I thought, because I had said even a little bit before this, I think it's very telling that Harry hasn't been around. He's pretty much the only character from the end of Slot's run that you haven't touched base on since. I mean, last time we saw Harry, you're dealing with the Red Goblin arc, and Harry's going off into his own little adventure. It does raise so this to me, I felt like was the biggest hint. A lot of people overthought it. Adam?
Now here we are.
Here we are, but yes. Adam, what do you think? I'll go Paul next.
Well, okay, I like these two issues. I like the art a lot. Otley's great. He gets to be really brutal in these two issues.
He gets to go back to go back to his invincible roots.
Yep. There's a lot of blood and a lot of like tame violence. The Kindred stuff is great. And like we're saying, these are like these two issues are probably maybe the most important now in the reveal of who he is. At
least what we think he is.
Let's be
clear.
What's because it could change, but
it's gonna change. It's gonna sit right now.
I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I like it, and yeah, it's like I didn't read Absolute Carnage. I had no interest. I'm not reading Venom. But I picked these up because it's like, okay, Kindred stuff. So, and it's like, oh yeah, this is really important. This is really good. And it's like there are all these clues now as to like who this guy might actually be, that are presented to us. They're two good issues. That they still have. They're relevant. They're definitely relevant now. And yeah.
Okay. Since Paul had to run off, Neil, what are your thoughts? And then we'll round it out with Paul and we'll go from there.
I think Adam kind of summed it up nicely. That great art by Otley, great steps on kind of putting us in the direction of Kindred. It did a good job of not having to have Absolute Carnage accommodate for it. It just worked on its own and kind of happened to have tie into Absolute Carnage. But yeah, Adam kind of summarized my thoughts on the issue fairly well. Like he also said, this was kind of a chance for Otley to go back to his invincible roots and get really messy with the art.
Mm-hmm.
There was one negative I had, and it kind of felt like it might have been able to be done in one issue, but it might have just been it might have just been a scheduling thing. Like they had to do 2 issues to fill in the time for Absolute Carnage to wrap up. But they were both incredibly well done issues. I just think that you see it later where they're kind of building time for ASM 850.
Right.
And they didn't need to have...
And listen, I accused Slot of buying time during the tail end of his run. That is something that, to me, I feel like just write the issues and give some more meat to the skeleton, because there is times where I'm sorry, we'll get into this the next arc because it's gonna be a doozy. I feel like, but yeah, I got to give some criticism to trying to hit an arbitrary number,
right,
as opposed to just letting the stories organically flow. I'm sorry, but some of the most important elements of Spider-Man's history don't happen in a milestone issue. They happen in a random slice of life issue. And so I have a bit of a problem with the sales department sitting there saying, well, we need to push out more books, you see, because sales are going down.
So if we oversaturate our market, then nothing can go wrong.
Exactly. So as much as that, I get that some of that's editorial, some of that is sales, and there is that push and pull that always happens. To me, trying to hit an arbitrary number, just write the freaking stories. I don't care what numbered issue it is for a reveal. Let's get to it.
But considering that this issue, that this is one of this episode that we're doing, this is the less egregious version of it by afar. I'm not going to get that upset about it, but you can tell that this could have been told in one issue. But I'm fine with 2. I will accept it. We'll talk about 2099 later.
I mean, they could have raised the price $1 or something and put this in 2 things or something like that. I mean, one thing.
Right. I'd have been more pissed off if I didn't have 2 weeks between issues. I mean, let's be real. If it had been 6 months, and we'll get into that. I will say this:
if there was just one, if it was just once a month, I think that this probably just would have been 1 issue.
I agree. Paul, you haven't got a chance to give your thoughts yet. I'm going to give you the floor, and then we'll move on to 2099.
No, I like these 2 issues, and I think that listen, we could argue all day long about this writer is extending this out for whatever. This is comic books, and if it's not a maxi series or a mini series, it's an ongoing series.
Sure.
Every writer is going to be guilty of this. I'm sorry.
No, I don't disagree.
And that's the thing. Like I'm not going to sit here and begrudge. This is all completely filler. Of course, a lot of it's filler. Come on. But I think that to me is, honestly, is the ultimate, not hard thing. What's the word I'm looking for? That's what makes a good comic book writer and ongoing writer, is that when they can make these mundane issues fun, or whatever. Like he or she has to get to a certain point. That's kind of the crux of these ongoing series, and because of that, you have to be good to be able to I have to do like a slice of life issue, like you said, Zach. But the difference is, back in the day, I don't think you had the hype and the things like that. They didn't have those abilities to hype those things up. They just had the direct to market, and that's all they had to direct to. But now they have the internet. There's a little more publicity, so there's a little bit more of an idea of building, and also people are now ready because of trade paperbacks, things like that. So you can't really compare like the 80s to this, because for God's sakes, graphic novels were barely being sold back in the day. So I understand totally what you're saying, because you're right. You could make this one issue double-sized issue, but that's the key. Double-sized. You couldn't just do it 22 pages justice, unless you want to do an all Kindred issue. Now that would be different. If it was an all Kindred, which again, that's essentially what it was, is just 2 issues spread out with Kindred, with the absolute or the whatever Carnage tie-in, whatever the hell it's called.
Absolute Carnage.
Absolute garbage, whatever it is.
It's not maximum. It's not maximum Carnage.
It's not minimum.
It's not minimum garbage. Carnage.
It's like Carnage USA.
It's not. Which was it?
I like Carnage USA, by the way. I thought that was pretty solid.
You and Tyler can talk about that, but real quick, as someone who liked Absolute Carnage, this should have just been a Venom arc. Like if they had just done like the Kindred stuff as what, because a lot of the first issue of this arc is spent recapping what happened in Secret Wars and Absolute Carnage. Yeah. So if you took that away, honestly, you could have had an entire issue focused on Kindred.
And now, but go ahead. I'll finish if you're done.
But like this comes down to Spencer kind of getting overwritten by editorial, or Niccolo, or whoever runs the Venom part of the line, and saying you're going to tie into Absolute Carnage, you're gonna like it.
No,
but Neil, here's the one thing, and this is where I would say yes, everyone's right that it didn't need to have to happen. It could have been a Venom tie-in. The one thing you got to remember, especially with these ongoing series comic books, and I can speak from experience because I was a kid buying Spider-Man, and Zach, we all were, is that these issues are actually instrumental for us learning about the characters that before we didn't have the internet. Now you can go on the internet and read everything. Right. But these issues are important because for readers who are just kind of jumping in, they're seeing the Spider-Man and the birth of Venom for the first time through Otley and through Spencer. And so even though I agree, I think it's also important that this stuff kind of happens because you kind of learn, these new readers who, and then they go, oh, this is what happened. It's in Secret Wars. That's why you love those little editorial,
I have appreciated that they've been using the editorial boxes and their, especially throughout this run, the Ron Stern method. And I look, could you have done some things structurally? Could you'd put, the minimum Carnage stuff at the beginning of the first issue and then kind of bleed the Kindred stuff into the next issue and then, do a whole issue of Kindred? Probably, but that's very, very minute and minor, especially if you're reading this in trade paperback. Definitely, it's not going to make a damn bit of difference. But for those of us that pick up these issues every other week, or in the case of November, this upcoming next month,
the next 2 months is Spider-Man every week. Jesus Christ!
I mean, there's a new Spider-Man issue every single week. So, but
think of it this way. If it wasn't absolute garbage, it'd be another shocker, like Spider-Man takes on the Shocker, or Spider-Man takes on blah blah blah.
No, Paul, I don't disagree. Sorry, Zach, were you saying something?
No, I don't disagree. I think you and I are about to say the same thing. I don't disagree with that. I do understand. I mean, I remember reading the issues of Web of Spider-Man by Terry Kavanaugh that was the Infinity Crusade. You know, like I remember reading
The evil twins, right? With like, or not evil twins. It's evil twins where he takes on like Sasquatch and Moon Knight, where he's like, yeah,
yeah,
But
you have the goddess and that whole thing.
The thing is, we have the benefit of hindsight, and like it's a bit easier to notice now. But like on their own, they are two very functional issues that are well written, well drawn. They pass every conceivable grading metric for a Spider-Man issue. It's just that looking on in the grander scheme of things, they could have maybe trimmed it down a little. But we're gonna take what we can get and move on.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right, grade A. I think that's the overall grade for these two.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because the Kindred stuff is that good. It's the Kindred stuff.
It's interesting. It keeps you wanting. The mystery is still ongoing, and you're like, oh, you want more of this. Who is this guy? Like, you know.
Exactly. So
and one last really quick thing. And you guys said it in the crawl space back in the day. It's great the fact he was able to use the old comic dialogue and panels from back in the day, like with Otley. Like using all that stuff. That was great. That was fantastic.
The flashbacks I feel like are important in some manner as to what's going on with Kindred. And
they wouldn't be there if they weren't.
I think that the fact that it's very deliberate in how that's framed and everything like that. So I'm really, really excited. And it's been a good thing going back and doing these books because I'm catching things that I didn't necessarily catch now that we're getting to at least an apex of that story. Mm-hmm. All right, we're.
You mind if I take the rein on this one?
Yeah, you're going to take the rein on this one because this is the story that I was like, damn it, Nick, why?
Yeah,
just why? All right, Amazing Spider-Man number 32 has a great. This is the cover by our brand new ongoing artist, Pat Gleason. Neil, and as simplest terms as you can, give me the
whole event.
Just let's rock and roll.
Okay, the future broke. Miguel's back. That's it. That's the story.
That's the 2099 event.
But Miguel O'Hara came back. The future broke, and he's having like schizophrenia because time broke, and he's kind of freaking out. But he escapes a Roxxon facility and tries to go after Peter Parker. Meanwhile, Peter's at ESU but gets called away by Teresa to spy on Chameleon, who Teresa has a vendetta against, as Joe recalled earlier, because he killed her boy toy. And they come across an exchange with the Foreigner. They fight each other, and then Peter gets attacked by a Silver Sable, who is revealed to be an LMD, and the real Sable was heavily injured during her fight with the Rhino and Ends of the Earth. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Countess Kharkov, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, she performs a hit on Dr. Doom while he's at the UN with D-list villain Hitman, which I very much appreciated, by the way. And basically, Miguel and Peter kind of intersect after Peter kind of tones down the crowd by saying Doombot. And time freezes, and then Dr. Doom begins taking over the world. Do you want to go over? Do you want to stop there because then it goes into the 29 event, or do you want me to keep going there?
Let's stop there. I just want to point out the awesomeness of the fact that we have the two.
Those covers are gorgeous. I would have taken those as posters.
Like almost exact same posters, but you got 616 and then 2099 universe.
There you go.
Almost the exact same pose, except obviously
they are
the exact same pose except for the hands. The flipping motion there, and then the claws there. But yeah, great posters for those. So this.
So
this is a hard one.
I have words about this. You want to go through the rest, or do you want to just focus on these three issues because they're Gleason and they don't really tie into the main event?
Yeah, let's just obviously it then leads to this issue. I'll pull the cover up right quick. Here's Victor Von Doom.
I love this cover too. Like the Gleason covers have been great.
This is a great cover. I would agree.
You're super biased. I have some problems with Gleason. I have problems with Gleason's eyes on Spider-Man. That's just me. I just feel like
you like the big eyes.
I like big eyes, but I also like them proportioned differently. I think.
How is that different than anyone else who drew big eyes? I don't understand.
I don't think it's much different from Bagley, to be honest.
It's not at all.
Yeah.
There was just little things in his. I remember, like when I was reading these, I was like, oh yeah, I remember I had some minor complaints about art, but also I think I feel like he's finding his groove much more now.
This was growing pains, I think. Like, this was like just after he signed on to Marvel and they put him on Amazing Spider-Man. They're like, okay, get to work. And
yeah, exactly.
Because Marvel a bunch of slave drivers. But I think for his first work at Marvel, this was good work. Like you said, he definitely improved going into ASM 50. I'll probably take the lead on that too, because those are his issues. But I think that I'm glad he's one of the rotating main artists. He has a very good way of drawing in sound effects on paneling, and I think I think the problem is Matt Wilson's coloring, because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. The lighting is just very weird. I think Edgar Delgado is much better fit for Gleason than Matt Wilson. Especially if you've read the Rebirth Superman run that Gleason does art for. He definitely does better with someone like Alejandro Sanchez. I think plot-wise, it hurt a lot from having to deal with... it should have just focused on the 29 stuff. I do like the Silver Sable Foreigner stuff and how it ties into later issues that we'll talk about in the next episode, I think. But it definitely suffered from having to focus on that instead of the 2099 stuff, which is infinitely more interesting, but also insanely more complicated. Because they had to structure an entire event around time travel, and time travel inherently in fiction is never easy to write. So Spencer wrote himself into a corner.
I would actually, for me, I actually liked the Silver Sable stuff. It was nice to get her back because, again, I keep going back to Nick Spencer's been doing this whole series, which is just taking continuity and instead of saying, how do I ignore continuity? How do I embrace continuity? Make it stronger. He took all these different elements of that Slott had done, and again, I'm bringing Slott into it, but and would say again, I'll bring in Teresa Parker, something that Chip Zdarsky brought in, which a lot of people complained about. Whoa, Peter Parker, my sister, and I was partially one of them. I'm always, it's weird because with Spider-Man, for whatever reason, I'm always a little more willing to let things at least show me if they can work. And I'll see if I can accept it. I'm not going to say no or yes. It's kind of let me see where you take it. And because with comic books, you have to.
Wasn't the first time that there was a sister, but this was prose. But it actually was in continuity. Technically, it was considered.
Prose can lick my balls anyway.
Oh my God!
No. Sorry, I'm not a pro.
What's wrong with the written word there, Paul?
Because I need panels. I need pictures.
You're the kid.
I've for whatever reason, I just don't like Marvel embarking in prose. I've never liked it. I just thought it was weird. It's still weird to me. I don't like it.
Okay, I will say this: there is good and there is bad. Okay, don't misunderstand, because I've read several of the prose novels.
Spider-Man is meant to be a comic book, not a novel. It can work as a novel, but it's a comic book. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that you have Teresa, and to be honest, this whole next 3 issues are a great example of Nick really taking continuity and making it stronger. I loved everything he did. I love the fact he brought in the Foreigner. The Foreigner, I mean, he hasn't been around in forever.
Yeah.
And I thought the Foreigner was dead, and truthfully, I'm like...
Exactly! I mean, I forgot he even existed. I'm like, oh yeah, the Foreigner got the purple pants. And, and I knew him and Sable had a connection. Then you brought back Silver Sable, which Dan Slott, again, killed, which it was always a bummer. I never liked the fact he killed off Silver Sable.
But he brought her back in the Norman story in ASM 25.
But didn't she was a clone? Was she a clone? Was that what happened?
Well, they implied it was just the real thing, but in this arc they revealed she was an LMD.
Right, yeah. So, but my point is this: is that he but then the whole reason that she comes back and she's reintroduced with a foreigner is that they bring in the Infinity Formula, which again is something that Nick Fury and Dum Dum Dugan take and keep them young. And they have this whole now subplot of with Silver Sable that she needs to keep getting a steady dose of it in order to get healed from it. Mm-hmm. And I love the things that he sets up with it because Silver Sable has always been one of those characters to me that is she's a great character, but no one has been able to get her through, like break through the mess of, oh, you're just a Spider-Man, side character or whatever, and that's really hard to do. I mean, these supporting characters like Silver Sable, it's so hard to get them past it. Wild Pack back in the '90s,
listen. I enjoyed the Stephen Butler drawn Silver Sable series. Like, I thought he was one of the definitive artists of Silver Sable just because he drew her. I mean, that was one of his definitive runs. A great artist to follow on social medias, by the way.
I just have to get back on topic because we're kind of
going. We got 3 more issues left.
I'm talking about all 3 issues because this is the whole thing. This whole arc. I'm talking about all 3. So I'm talking about I know,
but like if they just advertise this as the Foreigner Silver Sable arc, I wouldn't have as big of a problem. But like they made a really big deal out of bringing back the 2099 stuff. And until the Basildua issues, or is it the Basildua?
Yeah,
something like that.
But until those issues, that's like on the back burner. And frankly, if they had focused on like the socio-political stuff with like Doctor Doom and Silver Sable and like Countess Karkov, it wouldn't be this egregious to me. But they really advertised the crap out of 2099, and I kind of expected more on delivery that didn't tie into an event.
Well, he was. I mean, to be fair, he was in it. I mean, he wasn't in it completely, but he was in the story. Like he's in especially the last issue, if I'm not mistaken. I just read it the other day. I reread it the other day, and I forgot because I forgot Silver Sable's even in these books. To be quite honest, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot she's in this. And
the problem is that he bookends each issue, except for
that's a good point.
Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of I understand he's there. But it's sort of like the Jackal in like the stuff leading up to Clone Conspiracy, where he's just like,
you had to bring that up.
I'm bringing that up for a reason because
I know
because I know that I can see Zach straining to not shit his pants. But
even me. Having had the gastrointestinal issues I've had this week,
oh man,
that's not a hard thing to do.
But shit, where was I?
You're talking about how the fact of these 3 issues, they're focused on, they're bookended with the 2099 stuff, and if they would have focused on the political aspect,
if they've been advertised as they were written, right? I would say this is pretty good stuff. But I was promised 2099, and I get it, and I get
it's not
Quantico.
It's not really that important to the plot. Like he's just kind of sets up the. It sets up the stuff. It sets up the Jonah arc. It sets up the clairvoyant thing, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, now I can power this thing and try to stop Doom. But yeah, it's like it's a glorified cameo in this thing. It's funny how even in the recaps for the first couple issues of this, it's like Spider-Man 2099 is in the present, but Peter doesn't know that at all.
And then they only meet for 2 pages. Maybe 3.
Yeah,
that was disappointing to me.
Because he's like, I gotta find Peter, and he finds him, and then
he fucking gets Infinity Ward.
Yeah, it's like a handshake, and that's it.
Peter, I don't feel so good.
Yeah.
Oh,
honestly, this was the one arc that I felt like was an absolute.
This seems skippable to me.
It wasn't even awful. It comes
solid.
down to the advertising.
I think it's solid.
Okay. Even Paul will admit when Slott missed the mark, like in Clone Conspiracy, it really missed the mark. Here, it misses the mark, but it's still a C+ story.
Oh, it's better than a C. It's B- in my opinion.
I was gonna say
I was being a little harsh when I said C+, but that's my point. It's with Slott, it was such a realm of extremes. Versus with Spencer, at least in this specific instance, this is a B+ or B- arc. I'm not. Look, I barely missed the mark on 2099. I was just not quite old enough to read 2099. So, like 2099, everybody talks about, you're the 90s guy. I love 90s Spider-Man. I've went back and reread a good chunk of 2099. I enjoy it because
you've written essays worth of material on the Clone Saga. So.
Clone Saga, and I haven't done much post Clone Saga, but stay tuned. But definitely one of those things. It's just I look. I've always been the Clone Saga apologist / realist, and so 2099 was always a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I'm not as like, it's like Midnight Suns for me too. Like,
damn, deep cut, son.
That era of the 90s, I don't have that knowledge to draw from. I appreciate Midnight Suns, like when they crossed over with Spider-Man, the times that they did. I
ones think, in Web of?
Well, I mean, like that, but I also thinking like Morbius and Maximum Carnage and things like that. Like
he doesn't count.
He was part of the Midnight Suns.
He was wearing.
He's also a Spider-Man character.
But he was a Midnight Sun.
But they also spun him off pretty sort of successfully.
No, listen, it's because Zach. Remember, I grew up in the 90s too, and actually, I bought Spider-Man 2099, the first issue. The first 3 issues I picked up and I read. And I'll tell you right now, as a hardcore Spider-Man fan back in the day, it was not something I connected with because it just didn't feel like Spider-Man. I didn't really know it just didn't, to be quite honest, it didn't really have a lot of 2099 Spider-Man in it that much. It was a lot of talking. Yeah. And I remember being like, this is not interesting as a kid. And maybe it's better now. I actually have most in physical comics for when I collected physical comics. I have most of the run now collected. I've always meant to go read it, but because I've always heard it's pretty solid. But I remember as a kid, I just didn't like it as much because I didn't like people talking about it. As long as, and you gotta realize Peter David at the time was also writing television. He was doing comics, television, and novels all at the same time.
Yeah. Still is. It's honestly kind of impressive.
I mean, considering the man has had multiple strokes in recent memory and still is able to, function and to be able to be as prolific as he is, it's just utterly impressive. And have a active social media presence. And, he is very much a guy that I feel like writes 20 hours a day, sleeps for 4, and that's just him. He's a workaholic.
And listen, I think, and like you, Zach, I'm not super invested in the 2099 character. I think he's got an amazing looking costume. I think he's an important part of the Spider-Man mythos. I just don't connect with the character. So the fact that he wasn't in this that much, I didn't care because I'm a big Dr. Doom fan. I'm a huge Dr. Doom fan. He's probably my favorite villain in all of the Marvel Universe.
That new series is
so good. It's so good. Before we derail too much on that, and again, going back to Nick Spencer, what I loved about the series is the fact that I wasn't felt like we were being force fed this 2099 crossover, which was nice after the absolute Carnage thing. We then have the Doom, because I know Doom 2099 plays a big part into this whole 2099 thing, and that definitely was a part of it with having Doom in the series as well. Oh, that's great. I have that figure. I haven't taken it out of the box yet.
So good. The detailing.
It looks great.
I definitely recommend also breaking down and getting the re-release. Because if you like that old figure from the 90s, like the one that had like the stretch out arm or whatever, it's got the old school 90s Fantastic Four packaging from the 90s cartoon.
Oh, cool.
And it's got actually a few more accessories that this one didn't have.
Oh, but yeah, wrapping up my thoughts on these 3 issues. Again, I like the fact that Spencer was able to use his continuity, bring in all these different aspects. To me, I really liked Teresa Parker in this series. I thought she was used perfectly. I love when he said to her, like, do I have to tell you not to kill people? Remember? Like, I love that. Like the fact that like they're setting up he's, at least in my opinion, and again, I don't remember every word for word Zdarsky stuff, but I just like the fact that Teresa is different than Peter. They are not the same people just because they are biologically related. They are very different. And
it's very Ben Reilly-esque in the sense that they're definitely built from their life experiences.
Which is
she's a spy.
Reality, right? Yeah,
exactly. She's a spy. He's not. Look, Teresa Parker is one of those that I'm like, yeah.
I'm starting
to warm to her more.
Absolutely.
Spencer's taken over. Like, look, I was not a Carly Cooper fan, and I have really enjoyed how he's used Carly Cooper in the Spidey universe mythos.
Like, again, you can't take points off simply for the character being there. That's reductionist.
Right. And I remember, look, I'm not going to get too far in the weeds with the crawl space stuff, but I remember when Kevin, my good buddy, was writing his webcomic, he brought Carly Cooper as a supporting character and kind of gave her that role of Mary Jane and them being friends. And I enjoyed that aspect because, like, Mary Jane finally has somebody that she can, after Peter goes and talks shop, she can kind of unload her worries.
I did something similar with my Friend Neighborhood comic where she and Peter are close friends both in the mask and out of the mask. So
there is always potential. There's, to me, I've always said there's no bad characters. There's people that can't write those characters and just get a new writer on there, and they may be able to do things that you never thought were possible.
And I'm going to say two more things. One's going to be controversial, which I'm sure everyone will probably groan at, which is fine. I don't care because I'm punk rock. I don't care about that crap. So here's the deal. I love Teresa Parker's like Falcon wings. I think they should hop a mask on her, make her a Falcon character. Straight up. Like, I think she's a solid character.
Like a precursor to Raptor, maybe?
Or whatever. Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to call her. I think that she deserves this, and having her part of the Spider-Man supporting characters, like a side hero, would be really, really cool. So, and they already get out of the wings, put a mask on. I'm a big for those who don't know me well, I'm big into costumes. To me, that's why I read superhero comics. I don't read superhero comics for superhero powers. I'm a costume guy. Give me a costume. Yeah. So Teresa's literally just one mask away from being a superhero. And I think, but I love the difference between her and Peter. And I thought that Nick did a great job writing her. So I'm all about having more Teresa Parker. And I'm actually pro sister now. Like before I was kind of indifferent. Now I'm 100% after these issues, pro Teresa Parker. Last thing is there is a small nod to a Spider-Man comic book from the 90s of all things. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Anyone?
No, I don't. But as soon as you say it, I'm going to be mad because I'm going to be like, oh.
It's a deep. We're talking about. You want to talk about deep cuts, homies? Like, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the ultimate deep cut.
I thought there's a funny joke in here where they're like, "Weren't you a TA in the '80s or something?"
That is great.
It's like yes, he was actually.
I laughed out loud at that because I was like, way to sit there and make the joke about him being a TA, but it actually being true if you go back and read those.
Well, and not only that, but it was a brilliant way to say, yeah, he was a TA, but it might have been in the 80s, but obviously as a shifting timeline for Marvel, because Peter makes a comment like, well, I'm not that old. Yeah. I was like, oh man, that's so genius.
Well, and I did like the way where Peter kind of goes, it wasn't in the 80s. And it kind of bombed. It doesn't kind of look like it's not like in the slot era where he would look like an idiot for saying it, but he kind of obviously bombs on it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that would have been way better if I was wearing the mask.
Yeah, so, but I did enjoy that. Even though Peter is on his back foot, I like that Peter in this book is reactive, but not so reactive that he's 50 steps behind the bad guy's Grand Keikaku.
The character is still driving the plot, not the plot driving the character. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really appreciate. Yes, obviously there is an overarching plot that is affecting the character. That's a little different than the plot driving the story. And so what is the deep cut, Paul?
I'm trying to find the exact page because it's like a Hold on, I gotta find it. It's not in the Gleason issues. It's in the other
Basalgia issues.
Yeah. I'm trying to find exactly what page it was, but
also I'm going to recap the plot of those issues.
Yeah, go ahead, do it. I'll find it while you do that.
ASM 35 and 36. Spencer's writing, Basalgia's drawing, and then who's the colorist? Abertov.
Yep.
So basically, Peter and Teresa keep getting destroyed over and over again by Dr. Doom, but Peter gets pulled into the time stream by Lila, right?
Lila.
Yeah, Lila because Miguel time exploding gave powered up to clairvoyant, and now Peter can predict or can go into different timelines and basically minority report his way through the future. And they bring that up in another issue, and I will say that I do like how they kind of address Civil War II in that regard, and then go what the fuck ever, and then he basically convinces Dr. Doom to stay. I'm sorry,
I gotta bleep that out.
Well, it's not like you're not gonna go through it anyways.
Yeah, no.
But Peter basically outmaneuvers Dr. Doom, and I think he doesn't hand over Chameleon, but basically I think Teresa takes Chameleon into custody, right? But he basically talks Dr. Doom out of destroying the city, and then Peter gets trashed by Doom. And then Miguel wakes up on an island. I think it's in the Caribbean, but he finds Tempest and his unborn child, or his now born child, in that island. So that Miguel gets happy ever after. And the main 2099 timeline that was before the reset in Superior Spider-Man, I think that gets restored. And then Peter ends up with the device fully powered.
Yeah.
And then Countess Kharkov basically visits Silver Sable in the hospital and makes some threats with Dr. Doom.
Yeah. All right, so here's the deep cut. All right, so I think it's the last issue of this arc is issue 27, correct?
Yeah.
36.
36, okay. Page 12 of 36, the last panel. I want you to look at that panel for me.
Where Peter's running away from Dr. Doom?
Yeah. That is a direct homage to Eric Larson's Dr. Doom Amazing Spider-Man 350.
Yeah.
And the reason why I know that is because that's one of my favorite comics of all of Spider-Man ever, because it's Dr. Doom versus Spider-Man, and Dr. Doom just wipes the floor with Spider-Man the entire time. If you look at issue 350, page 10, top panel, bam! Can't really see it very well right here.
I do think that I'm not sure if it was an homage or just they knew it was an easy to, because a lot of this art looks traced. It's not like Greg Land noticeable, but there's some really weird anatomy choices, and it looks like it was copied from different
This is not traced, I don't believe, because one thing, if you look at Dr. Doom is freaking. I blew it up, but his Dr. Doom looks like he's fucking been pumping iron for 40 years straight, and that guy's Dr. Doom is super scrawny.
I'm not saying they traced the book.
I know what you mean. It's a swipe. It's a swipe, but But to me, it's because it's Dr. Doom and Spider-Man. To me, it's more of an homage because. Right. It's obvious to me. Because I never looked at anything like this and said, "Oh, he's obviously ripping things off." There's a lot, maybe some homages in it, but I don't think it's a straight up I need a quick Spider-Man panel with Dr. Doom. I think this is probably something that, like me, he probably loved this issue of Spider-Man. Was like, "Oh, I'll make a little homage thing to it." But I couldn't believe it because I love that comic so much. And when I was reading this issue back when I first read it, I was blown away. I'm like, "Oh, it's the same panel." So anyway, massive deep cut for the Spider-Man fans, if you haven't noticed.
So I think looking at it, now that we've kind of gone through the whole arc, the biggest problem with this arc is that it serves as a setup for different storylines. Because you got the clairvoyant stuff, you've got the Silver Sable Foreigner stuff,
Chameleon.
You've got Chameleon. It basically feels like just one big setup arc, and I get that probably wasn't the point. It was supposed to be. I feel like editorial stepped in here too. Spencer wanted to do a 2099 story to celebrate 80 years of Marvel, because I think it was also an anniversary for 2099 if I'm correct.
Right.
Well, because it was like 2099 is going to be 80 years from now, and it's also Marvel's 80th anniversary.
That was right at the midpoint of Marvel's 80th anniversary in 80 years, which is really kind of a cool symmetrical thing because, I mean, clearly the 30th anniversary issue of Amazing Spider-Man is when they did the preview, like the first 6 pages of Marvel of Spidey 2099. So, like, obviously, it was, you know, a very big era of Spider-Man. The 30th anniversary was a big deal. They made it into a big deal in the 90s. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I'm gonna, like I said earlier, these are C+ for me, all of them.
I'm willing to be generous. I'm gonna give him a B-. Gleason kind of carries the grade for me. It would have been a C, like a flat C, but Gleason really steps up. Like I know that like it's not his best since coming onto Marvel,
right?
But he definitely carried his weight at the very least.
Right. He does good work. It's like you said, growing pains, but it's good. It's good.
No, I don't disagree. So
it's better. It is better than the Basil Dua stuff, I think, because like, and even some of that Basil Dua stuff, it's like there are times where
it's not even horrible. Like there's some really weak panels, but like
well, there are also some panels where like he doesn't finish Spider-Man's webbing. Like he'll have like, you know, the vertical lines, but he won't do the little webs, and it's like
that's called a rush job.
In fairness, that's something Otley does. So it's
all artists do stuff like that.
Well, but I mean, like, I'm not talking about complete absence of webbing. I'm talking about like he did half of it. Like he did the lines, but he didn't do the like curved, you know, scalloped webbing part.
That's definitely a deadline issue too. Trying to get these, and let's also be fair. Spencer was writing extra books to build up to this 2099 event. He wrote the 2099 issue, and then he did the
Spider-Man 2099 issue,
the Spidey 2099 issue, and he also wrote the Alpha and Omega issues of the event. So like, yeah, clearly he was pressed for time. Again, that's why I gave it the C+ grade, because it does feel very much like a haphazard event comic done to kind of push out to either first quarter fiscal year of 2020, or it's, you know, trying to do a big event at the end of, you know, fourth quarter 2019. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things. Next time we're gonna get into the next year, and in fact, we get the first mention in the solicitations with this issue with Otley of Last Remains, and so the build up towards Last Remains begins with issue 37. We are, as of this recording, getting very, very, very close to. I think we're 2 or 3 trades away. We're at volume 5 or 6 right now. Volume 5.
We just closed up volume 7.
So we got volume 8 and volume 9 are the ones. Volume 9 is the one that's just been released.
And then volume 10 is Sins of Norman Osborn and 49, I think.
Which, I mean, yeah, those like the Last Remains, Prelude, and I think Sins of Norman Osborn are both that we're going to have to cover because they're just so integral to the plot. But yeah, we're definitely at the stage where we're getting very close to doing these live. So I'm going to be releasing these in probably a much quicker manner than I anticipated, because it was just going to be weekly. But we've got enough of a buffer now that I feel like we're in good shape. So yeah, we're really, really excited. I'm excited to be covering. Look, GOG. I got a lot to say about GOG. Let's put it that way. God damn it, and the amount of puns.
I'm gonna have words to say, not about people, but like how people treated the GOG arc.
Right.
I'm gonna have words on that.
Yeah, me too. Because I think there was a lot of unfairness towards Spencer. I think there was a lot of unfairness towards the situation. Nobody anticipated that we'd be in a pandemic in 2020. That literally shut the entire, not just the U.S., but the entire world down for a period of time. And the impact that ultimately had. I mean, let's be frank. Amazing Mary Jane got an extension. I want to talk about having to do stuff on the fly.
and then got lynched in midway, like in the first issue of its second arc.
Yeah, and got canceled because basically they were having to cut costs, and it just didn't make any sense. Because
if Muhammad what Muhammad told me is correct, Gwen Stacy's also dead too because the trade order got canceled that he set for it.
Look, and that actually was a really good miniseries. I thought that was very well done by Christos Gage. Great artwork by Todd Nauck. Listen, I would love to see Todd Nauck do some Amazing Spider-Man and be part of the rotating cast of artists. I think he's
earned that by now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's one of those that he's done ancillary titles.
He's had it. He's slammed.
Put
me on ASM.
No, he's kind of like this generation's John Romita Jr. in that, if you recall, like especially '90s Romita, he was always on Adjutant of Spider-Man, Peter Parker, whatever you want to call it, and then he finally gets promoted to the main book, with Mackie, when around issue 20, when Jenkins and Buckingham show up for taking over Peter Parker, and then Romita is like, oh yeah, he's back on Amazing Spider-Man, and he just hits his stride eventually when he gets to JMS.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unlike JR though, Todd Nauck's art has gotten better as he's gotten older.
That's true.
The moment he left, when he left Marvel and after his Avengers arc with Bendis, I don't know what happened to Klaus Janson, but the inking was so atrocious.
No, his pencils are if you look at the art for his pencils are equally as bad. Like if you look at Avengers, it's hard to look at. Like I don't want to read it.
But then you go look at Kick-Ass and it was a lot tighter. And
Kick-Ass was his last, at least the first volume. I dropped that for the second or third. I forgot.
Yeah.
I did not. I like the first volume of Kick-Ass, but that first volume was solid. It's really, really good. I thought.
But it's weird because once he went to DC and did All-Star Batman with Scott Snyder, he felt a lot cleaner in terms of his line art, and then he did Silencer with I think Jim Lee.
Dan Abnett, I think, was the guy who wrote it.
Yeah, but it felt like he had much greater artistic control, and
I see what you're saying. Okay,
and therefore a lot less. Bendis tends to write it very decompressed, and I think that's something that has something to do with how the art comes out.
I don't disagree. Whereas I feel like Romita worked better on a full script. Whereas
the Marvel method.
Yeah, he wasn't one of those, because think about it. You got a guy like Roger Stern who can churn out a script in a day, and or in a week, and have it ready to go. That's how he cut his teeth through the industry. Same thing with Howard Mackie, and they all wrote full scripts, whereas Bendis did not write full scripts. He writes overarching arcs, and then lets kind of the artist breathe. But the problem is, I think with Romita, he was so used to doing it with full scripts that it was kind of like he almost had too much freedom, if that makes sense.
I also think that Romita, and I have not. He's one of my favorite comic artists, but I have not followed him a lot, or at least as far as his work as Marvel. I have not followed him complete with DC, but I will also say that the prequel to The Dark Knight was actually, I thought, pretty good too. His art was pretty solid in that.
Look, there's certain characters that I feel like just he can do, and Batman, I had always felt like.
His Punisher Batman stuff was awesome. It looked great.
Punisher Batman was great. Daredevil. I think he's in the Daredevil Batman too.
His recent art on Tom King's Batman was atrocious. It's got to be Klaus. It's got to be Klaus Janson. There's something wrong with Klaus Janson, and for whatever reason, it is
issues.
I think it's just maybe Janson's style. It worked. It might have worked for Romita Jr. stuff in the 80s, but maybe not now.
It might be the coloring. We've gone digital. It's gone digital now, and so a bunch of stuff's getting lost in translation.
Yeah.
And that is the fact that's not discussed enough, I don't think, about how much of an effect that digital art has on a lot of. It reminds me very much, and Paul, you'll probably understand this reference. When they brought in, who was the guy that? I just blanked on his name. He he did Night when Stacy died. He did the pencils, whereas Romita did the break like the inks.
Gil Kane.
Gil Kane.
Oh, Gil Kane, yeah.
When they brought
Okay,
Gil Kane
yeah.
into the 90s, you look at Gil Kane's artwork in those few issues of Adjective of Spider-Man, you're like, oh.
That's bad.
I think
You know
it's
what's funny is I think Gil Kane's kind of overrated in general.
No, look, I think that
He's kind of grown on me. The
Gil
70s
Kane-
stuff has grown on me a little bit.
Gil Kane with Romita was great. Gil
Yeah.
Kane, I saw some other Gil Kane artwork.
That's because Romita kind of takes over when he inks. He's one of those artists. But
Dude,
also, you can still see some of Kane's idiosyncrasies in there, and I actually like that. It kind of because Romita's very like clean, so like Kane's is a little like looser and grittier, and like it's a good mashup.
I'll never forget reading the last John Byrne issue that John Byrne drew of the reboot. It's actually inked by Romita, and you can so tell it was inked by Romita.
Totally.
Because it doesn't hardly it's like this weird amalgam. That's a good Clone Saga Chronicles reference for a future episode.
Heyo.
It's an amalgam
Spider Boy.
which was actually Mike Ringo's big break into getting a gig on Sensational and Marvel in general, actually.
But I think like it might just be Klaus Janson because like if Mark Morales, he's an inker I found on Twitter who did a Romita piece,
right,
or a Romita Jr. piece, and it looks substantially better than anything Klaus Janson's put out. But it could just be Romita Jr.'s gotten old and lazy and carried on his dad's name. So
I don't think it's that necessarily, but you're going to have a natural regret. But what I was trying to get with on Gil Kane, because these were issues that were done like within like 6 months before him passing away.
Mm-hmm.
You do have a regression over a period of years, and then for somebody like look at Sal Buscema, for example, before he went to being an inker full time, he, there was a few times where he penciled stuff and it looks great, and I've seen some of his most recent pencils. I'm like, Sal's still got it. I don't think Sal can do a monthly book, but he can fill in every once in a while.
Sure.
And obviously his work with Ron Friends is just absolutely freaking gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then pretty much now, whenever Ron does a book, it's basically, let's do Sal. He called up Sal. Sal says, yep, I'm there. And the funny thing about the Blue Baron series that they're doing is that I actually were looking for maybe bringing Sal to do the pencils, and it turned into, he doesn't do pencil work anymore, but I can bring him on as an inker. So, so you've seen it scrolling across the screen. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening to us on the audio version, you're not seeing this, but you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Spideydude Network. Twitter is at Spideydude Radio. The voicemail line, of course, is 818-925-6631. And the email address is SpideydudeRadioNetwork@gmail.com. Be sure to leave your reviews also on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. We're really, really excited about the future. And guys, thank you for being on this episode. I cannot wait to cover the 8th volume of Amazing Spider-Man. And
it's Jonah time.
It's Jonah time, which
and
I know
Gog time.
Jonah Gog time. So thank you for listening to this episode of the absolutely $20.99 Carnage special. We'll see you next time here on the Spideydude Radio Network.
We need to include a holographic cover foil for this one.
We probably should. All right, everybody. Good night.